And so she tasted this fresh batch of granola and she was like, this needs to be your next product. This is like better than anything I've ever tasted.
Hey everyone, I'm Morgan, co-founder of Primal Kitchen and host of the Primal Kitchen podcast. Today, I'm excited to be speaking with Purely Elizabeth founder, Elizabeth Stein, as she talks about her journey from holistic nutritionist to CEO of her own health food company, ditching grains and the importance of nuts and seeds for gut health. Before we get into it, a brief reminder that any and all opinions and views shared by hosts and guests on this podcast are the speaker's own and do not represent the view of Primal Kitchen or its affiliates or parent company. Hello, how are you?
Hey Morgan, so nice to see you.
No kidding. So good to see you. It's been way too long. We haven't even seen each other since before COVID, like 2018. So it's great to see your face.
When we used to go to events live and in person.
I know, I miss those days. So tell me, the audience wants to know, you have like such an amazing background and an amazing brand. I'm sure everyone listening has heard of Purely Elizabeth, but kind of a definite like thought leader, innovation leader on just the grain-free granola front and the paleo movement, all of those things. But give us the lowdown on how you got here and your journey from holistic nutritionist, I guess even to holistic nutritionist, because I feel like there's got to be a good story there.
Yeah, totally. So I am 12 years into the Purely Elizabeth journey from when I started. But really, I go back to, I think as a kid, like I was always relatively healthy. I was, an athlete in high school. And then in college, I, continued to, I would say, have a more like healthy relationship with food and wellness, more so than any of my friends. And I think now when I reflect back to it, I went to Boston University and I was driving to Cambridge, which was like 20 minutes away, to go to a Baron Baptiste hot yoga class a couple times a week. And now in retrospect, being like 19 and doing that in college, back then I think was so ahead of its time. But I just remember like going into that first yoga class and feeling so incredible and really like putting two and two together. I think not of just what I was eating, but how that mindfulness was important. And so after college, I moved to New York City, tried to figure out what I wanted to do and stumbled through a couple of different jobs, but ultimately was working in the handbag industry, doing sales and marketing. And I met my boyfriend at the time, who was a big triathlete. And he was a personal trainer as well. And while I was an athlete in high school, I hated running. Like I would hide in the woods during lacrosse practice when we had to go run like miles around our school. Running was not for me, but he convinced me to start doing marathons and triathlons. And so totally out of my comfort zone, but really there was so much more to it than I think just the physical training and really understanding that it was what you were eating and it was the mental part of it. And so all of that really started to connect with me and excite me. And I started wanting to pursue a career that somehow tied these things together. And so I ended up finding the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, IIN, for those who have done the program. This was back in 2007, so when they were doing live classes in New York, and did the program, fell in love with it immediately, and knew that this was where I wanted my future. So with that program, I was teaching clients one-on-one and I was teaching cooking classes.
Did you like quit your job and start coaching, I guess?
So I was doing both for a little bit. And then ultimately I had said like, there's no way that I can be all in on trying to start my own business if I'm also at work at the same time. So I took the leap. And I was very fortunate because my boyfriend was a personal trainer. And so he had kind of a funnel of clients who ultimately were then able to come to me from nutrition. So, I think a lot of people starting out in that position, it's really scary because how do you get the clients to come and, leave your position? But it was very lucky to have that. So I started doing that, and I also was getting my yoga teacher training and just getting fully immersed in all of those holistic mind-body pieces. And while I was in the program, I was working with a lot of clients who were gluten-free. And back then, there were very few options for gluten-free items. I mean, paleo and keto literally like weren't even talked about. It was just on the fringe, I would say.
Keto wasn't
And
even talked about until like, God, after Primal Kitchen launched. I mean, I
right.
remember thinking when we launched our keto bars, like, should we put keto on this? Like, are they gonna make bad assumptions? Like, and that was in 2017. I mean, it's new. So yeah, you
It's
were
so
way ahead of
new
the curve there.
for sure. And so I really like somewhere in the back of my mind thought, hey, there needs to be better, not only better tasting gluten-free products, because the products that existed were there, but they didn't taste good, but also more nutrient rich. Like everything at the time was just made with white rice flour and sugar, etc. So long story short, that was in the back of my mind. I didn't think anything of it, but it was definitely like percolating back there. And ultimately, I went to a local triathlon to participate in the race, but also to try to get clients. So I had a booth at a race expo when everyone's walking around getting their numbers. And the night before the race, I decided to make a batch of blueberry muffins, like totally out of the blue. But I just decided, you know what, this is 2007. It's really not like sexy talking about holistic health for me to get people to come up and sign up for my program. Let me make blueberry muffins and like hopefully that will entice people to come and chat with me. And sure enough, nobody at the race was I actually got one client to sign up for my practice, and everybody else just wanted to know where they could buy these delicious muffins. And so
Yeah.
that became the aha moment. I pivoted, that day and told people when they sign up for my newsletter, I'll let them know when the products will be available.
And did you plan on launching muffins?
I didn't plan on launching anything. I
Oh,
mean, I like literally was just making it up on the
okay.
spot and
Okay.
just said like sign up for my newsletter and I'll let you know. And so
Oh,
I
okay.
left the race. That was October of 2007. I left the race and thought like, okay, I should do something with it. And then it just went into the back burner. And then a couple of months later, I decided, you know what? Why don't I start this thing on the side? I'll sell it to clients, muffin mixes to clients and friends and family, and we'll just like see what happens. And so I went to Fancy Food Show that summer, walked the show. I knew what I wanted like my packaging to look like. And then I went to the expo, that same expo again, October of 2009, and I launched at the race thinking it would be a side project. I probably brought like 40 mixes, sold out at the race, and then a couple days later, Daily Candy reached out and they had heard about the products and they featured us in their newsletter blast. And I had $10,000 of orders in 3 hours.
Got it.
And that was how it started.
And you were making them in what, like your kitchen, a commercial kitchen? Your
Not in
kitchen.
a commercial.
Yeah.
It was in my mom's house in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and then we quickly found a commercial kitchen.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is crazy. $10,000 worth of orders. And then did it like plateau and then peak again? Or like, what did that look like after launch?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it definitely snowballed right from there. Like all of a sudden we had this press and it was Food and Wine magazine was reaching out and Oprah magazine was reaching out. So we were so fortunate to keep getting these
Oh,
hits. And
crazy.
like back in 2009, social media didn't exist. So it was the time of PR,
Yeah.
having that was like gold. So that first year, I only sold, or for the most part, only sold online because we already had this online, kind of, I don't want to say community because it wasn't that back then, but it was just a following
Yeah. An
from the
audience. People were
press.
already buying it online.
Yeah.
Amazing. And how many products did you have the first year?
Four. So we had three muffin mixes and a pancake mix. Granola wasn't even a thought.
That is crazy. Because you're just to me, like, I mean, is granola now your number one category?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that is nuts. Okay, so catch us up to speed. So this is 2000. What happens then? Like then you get into retail. Like how does the story evolve? Because I feel like it evolved quite a bit from then.
Yeah, for sure. So that first year, I was living in New York City and using a commercial kitchen in Philadelphia where I'm from, and I was driving back and forth 2 hours one way to use the kitchen with my mom and then driving back to the city, filling up my car with product and shipping it out of my apartment. Like it was insane. Um, And after that first year, I went to Expo East for the first time and thought, this is really early on, but I just want to see like we have a good feedback from consumers, but let's see what retailers think. And this is going to like make or break the business. And so went to that show and got like such great feedback. At that point, I had come out with a cookie mix as
Okay.
well. And so we had that and we won like top 5 best new product at the show.
Stop it.
And it was me and my mom, were explaining like what coconut sugar was and almond flour, like all these ingredients that, people weren't using. And at that point, hired a broker and an outside sales management team. And that got us ultimately into Whole Foods, I would say, in the second year of business.
Awesome. And then when did you leave New York? Because you're in Boulder now. So,
I'm in Boulder now. So I left New York after about 5 years. So at that point, we had really been focusing just on the natural channel. And we had just gotten in, actually, right when we moved here, we just got into Target. And it was like this huge deal that we were moving to Boulder and we got into Target and we had started using a co-packer out here, which was part of the reason for moving
oh,
here.
crazy. Interesting. I didn't realize that. Yeah. And
Yeah,
for those listening, I mean, the Boulder is one of, I would say Southern California and Boulder. I mean, there's quite a bit in Chicago as well, and New York, of course, but those two seem like kind of the mecca for the natural products industry. I mean, there's so much in Boulder, like a lot of investment, private equity. It's just a big hot spot. So,
totally. It felt like it was, really the right place to be connecting with like the food community
yeah,
here.
for sure. That's amazing. And did you have any like health issues? Like, are you gluten free or how has your like diet evolved through all of this?
Yeah, I would say that I mean, my diet philosophy in general is like an 80-20 rule to things. So at home, I would say I'm 100% gluten-free. I feel better without it in my diet. And back to when I was in school and doing the program, had started eating that way and felt better without it in my diet. And also just feel like it's an inflammatory food for the majority of people. And
Yeah.
so that was my stance, for the last many, many years.
Yeah. And what does your health and wellness routine look like nowadays? Because you've mentioned a lot about like mindfulness. I also got my yoga teaching certification. I'm like right there
Did you
with you. But
teach?
no, I mean, I was terrible. I was a terrible yoga teacher. Like I remember I had to do like just for a little class and getting my yoga certification. I was like,
Yeah.
this is not my zone of genius. Like
Yeah. I felt the same way.
terrible.
I taught like 2 classes to friends, and then I was like, no, this was like great
Yeah.
to do for
I
myself.
just like doing a lot of yoga. Yeah. But so what does it look like now for you? Because you got a lot going on.
For sure. I guess, as I think about like my morning, I'm a morning person, like by far.
Like
I'm
5 a.m. morning type person.
5 a.m. and like
Oh,
asleep by 8:30.
oh wow. Okay.
I
Yeah.
take my sleep very seriously. So sleep, number one, is super important to me. I have a Whoop that I've had now for about a year. I don't know if you
My
know
husband has
anyone.
one.
Okay,
He
so
really
is he
likes it.
super into it?
Yeah, he really likes it. Yeah. Tell everyone what the Whoop is if they don't know.
So a Whoop is this wearable device. There's the Aura Ring that are very similar, but it tracks your sleep and it tracks your workouts as well, and the strain that happens throughout your day. And ultimately, all of those numbers come together while you sleep to give you a daily recovery number. So it's super interesting, tracking your sleep, and you can see how the different stages of sleep. So if you got deep sleep, REM sleep, etc., you can see if you had 2 glasses of wine, what that might have done to your recovery the next day. Just they now have a journal actually that you can put in every type of input. So really to start correlating to say, oh, I had dairy yesterday
Oh,
and now my
interesting.
recovery is less than it was, or whatever it might be for you. So it's super cool.
What did you learn? What have you learned from it? Like how impactful was the 2 glasses of wine?
I actually learned, and part of this I just learned in Cabo with Danielle,
I love
that
it.
having tequila is way better for me than having wine.
Interesting.
So like one glass of wine and it's fine on my recovery. Two, it definitely makes a big difference. But two margaritas don't
Fine.
make a big difference. It's fine.
Really?
Yeah.
That is interesting. I have found a similar, I don't do well with wine either personally, like migraines, and yeah, it's something I can't quite figure that one out, but
It's
um,
probably also the type of wine. So if you had like the dry farm wines that are organic and don't have
yeah,
sulfites versus something that we don't know is in the wine.
it's very true. Or just added sugar. There's all sorts of sugar.
Right. For sure.
What else?
So sleep is certainly really important. And then morning person, my morning routine, I love to work out in the morning, like mixing it up between Peloton, weights, yoga, any sort of movement, I think more so for my mental wellness than anything else. And then I try to do a 5 minute journal in the morning. I don't do it every day, but really trying to use that time for gratitude journal and just like setting myself up for priorities kind of for the day.
Okay, so you're an avid like cyclist too, though, don't I always see you like you're on the Peloton a lot. Am I right?
I'm on the Peloton a lot.
Yeah.
It's funny though because I was doing triathlons
Yeah, I was
before.
gonna say, are you still running or how did that evolve?
Yeah, so it was really once the business started to become like all consuming, which I suppose was probably about day one,
Yeah.
it just became really hard to commit, I think, that much time
Yeah.
to racing. But I laugh because here I was doing triathlons in New York City, and then I moved to Boulder, which is like the mecca of triathlons, and I literally never took my triathlon bike out of the bike box from moving here.
Do you still have it or did you sell it?
No, actually during COVID, I ended up selling it. I was like, I'm never using this.
This phase of life is gone for
Yeah,
me. Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
great. So the Peloton, no more marathoning, no more for now, triathloning.
For now, yeah.
And what's like what things did you pick up as a holistic health coach that like you carried with you and I don't know, were helpful?
I would say probably the biggest thing is focusing on greens, on leafy greens. So as I think about composing a meal, a plate, I like the first thing that I think about is how do I incorporate some sort of green in here, like kale, broccoli, bok choy, Swiss chard. And then I think about the rest of my plate and really thinking about like filling my plate with about half my plate with that green. And ultimately, those are great for detoxification, for all the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that they have, and just super uplifting and light. And so
Yeah.
that's definitely the biggest takeaway. I would say for the most part, my diet is, gluten-free, dairy-free. I tend to eat a little bit of red meat, and not because like I'm trying not to, it's just not my favorite
Yeah.
thing. And then fish and chicken. And of course, not having processed foods and sugars and all of those sorts of
Yeah.
things.
I mean, just eliminating that is like it's half the battle. Yeah.
Totally.
So what are you most excited about? Like what's happening in health and wellness that you're pumped about these days? Besides the whoop.
I Besides what?
Besides the whoop.
Yeah. um, I think I've been excited about, and I think it's just coming even more, just the personalization of things, which I guess is like correlates back to the Whoop. But I think about, all the testing that's happening, like Viome, I think is the name of it, that does a test on your gut microbiome. So
Yeah.
really trying, like, ultimately, there's still so much that we're going to learn about the power of our gut health and how that correlates to everything. And so to me, that deeper understanding on what is making up our gut and like what we're lacking and what we're needing, I think is super interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. There is so much happening in that space. It's exploding. I mean, you've got like the Levels app and Zoe, and there's just so much. It is. I'm wearing like my continuous glucose monitor right now from Levels. I just signed up and I'm loving that. So it's It's
Tell
fun.
me about that. Yeah, I do want to sign up for levels
Yeah,
actually.
it's cool. I did Zoe for a little bit, but this is their app is really good at like telling you a score on like every time you eat. So you can like see how you react to certain foods just from a blood sugar, like insulin resistance standpoint. It's just tracking your glucose, like it could just like a continuous, just like a finger prick glucose monitor. But this one is the continuous. You have to scan it like only once every 8 hours. So it kind of reminds you like scan your phone, but you can wear it for 2 weeks and stores all the data, and the app's really like sleek. So you can see like what your fasting is when you wake up. And then, you know, you just learn things like if I go for a walk after I eat, it really does bring my blood sugar down. Like it makes a tremendous difference.
Wow.
Also,
How
like
long of a walk do you need to go
I mean,
on?
even if you just walk for 10 minutes, like if my blood sugar is going up and I go on a walk, like it stops and starts to
Wow.
go the other way, which is something they like kind of train you on. Other things, let's see. Some people I think are more insulin resistant. I learned this from talking to Tim Spector, who started Zoe, but some people are more insulin resistant in the morning, some people in the evening. It's more rare to be like, I do better in the evening. So if I eat like a steak for dinner, I can have ice cream after with almost like no effect on my blood sugar. But if I had like oatmeal for breakfast, I would be like through the roof. So it's just
Wow.
interesting. Yeah. Um,
That's so cool. Is
yeah.
there any food that you've had that you're surprised by how you've reacted?
Um, I was starving the other night before we were going out to dinner, and the boys had like a Trader Joe's cauliflower like pizza for dinner because we were going out, but I couldn't like I had like three tiny sliver pieces like that you would give a 2-year-old, or I think it was actually for my 18-month-old. And my blood sugar went like through the roof from this, gluten-free cauliflower
Oh,
pizza that
cauliflower.
wasn't, yeah. And I didn't eat that much of it. And I was just thinking, man, like, I don't know. I didn't, there was no protein really paired with it. Or, I mean, there's some cheese on there, but not a lot of like fat. I think when you eat protein, it really does blunt the blood sugar effect like pretty tremendously for me. But this is
Yeah.
what's cool about it. Like it might be different for everyone.
Right.
So
It's the personalization that we're
yeah,
learning that's so
no,
cool.
it is so cool. There's a like the Rhonda Patrick was just, or maybe it was someone else talking about the DNA company, I think it's called, but they could do like, I've done a lot of those like self decode and a lot of the different like DNA tests because I did 23andMe like back in the day, and you can download your raw data and then you just upload it to all these different new apps and they like interpret
Oh,
it,
that's
give you
cool.
advice that way. I want to do that one, but I haven't done that yet. So yeah, I think we're on like the cusp of some major innovation there. So it's like really, really cool.
The
Um,
other super cool thing, I was just listening to David Sinclair and
oh yeah,
longevity stuff. So he was saying, he was like very confidently that in the next 5 years that we'll be able to take some sort of a vitamin or pill that literally will reverse your age, your cellular age by like 10 years.
that is nuts. I had Dr. Amy Killen on the podcast, and she talks a lot about, well, rapamycin's like kind of a metformin. People take the metformin drug, which is it's like I have family members who are on it for pre-diabetes, but it helps
Yeah.
blunt the blood sugar effect, right? So much of it comes back to metabolic health, but people on metformin were like living 7 years longer in spite of their diabetes diagnosis. Something about the metformin was like, so there's some like biohackers that try to just like they just take metformin. They're not even like
Right.
pre-diabetic. Yeah. But then rapamycin is another one that is interesting that is kind of already doing similar functions, but it has gotten like a bad rap, not to be punny. But I think there's some interesting thing there. I actually sent it to Mark, I don't know, a few weeks, because I was like, what do you think about rapamycin? He's like, I don't know. And then I had sent him this like whole long article. He's like, I don't know. Maybe I'm like, I need to learn more about this. I'm kind
I
of
was
curious.
gonna say, what's he doing?
Yeah. Oh,
He
Mark.
taking anything?
No, Mark doesn't do much of anything. It's just some testosterone, which he's posted about on the blog. I should really have him on here and do a whole like anti-aging. But Mark is like, he's an ex-professional triathlete. So he's just
Right.
got a lot of like muscle memory. And then he follows like the Primal diet pretty religiously.
And
But
two
Mark,
meals a day.
and 2 meals a day. Yeah, he's never been big on breakfast. But Mark has coffee with sugar in it every morning. Like he's not militant, but he's definitely structured. But yeah, no, he's not doing anything crazy aside from like a little testosterone supplementation, which is, I think, pretty mild compared to what
Sure.
some people are doing. And Mark's still super active, and they moved to Miami. He's walking like a ton more than I think he was in Malibu. So he's like enjoying that part of the lifestyle. But yeah, yeah. Okay. Who else? Who's inspiring you these days?
Well, now that we're talking about Mark, now that's like front and center of my
Yeah,
mind.
I know.
I mean,
67, just still has the 8-pack.
right, it's
It
incredible.
is. Yeah, it's
And
cool.
what you guys have done is incredible. So you're
No,
front
that
and
feels like a
center of my
cop-out
mind.
answer, but I'll take it. It's sweet. It's very sweet. Okay, what's your favorite Purely Elizabeth product?
So I would say probably our original granola.
Yeah, that's the yellow bag.
That's the yellow
Yeah,
bag.
we buy
That's
that one. I have like 3 of them in the pantry.
our number one seller and really like what transformed the business and was a total accident, really.
What do you mean?
So, as I said when we started, didn't have granola. It was just muffin and pancake mix. And I was never truthfully a granola eater. Like maybe once or twice I had granola, but I definitely wasn't like incorporating granola into my diet. I never set out to say, hey, I'm going to make our next product granola. But what happened, I was living in New York, as I said at the time, and I don't remember what happened that weekend, but it was like a rainy weekend in the winter in New York. You're bored, there's not much to do. And something possessed me. And it must have been like something I saw online that there was a recipe for granola or something. And I decided to make granola this one Sunday. And I was incorporating all of these ingredients that I was learning about in school. So, at the time, quinoa was like maybe I got it at the back of the small health food store in New York. Like you weren't even buying that at Whole Foods. It was like
Yeah.
quinoa and chia and coconut oil. Anyway, I made this batch of granola and my mom was in town visiting and she was a huge granola eater. Like she knew every product on the market. She just loved granola. And so she tasted this fresh batch of granola that came out of my oven and she was like, this needs to be your next product. This is amazing. This is like better than anything I've ever tasted. And that is our original granola. And I never changed the recipe
Oh
from
my
that
God, that's
day.
amazing. Is your mom still working with you today?
Great question. So my mom, she does still make some sales calls. So in the beginning, she was my sole helper, and
I
she
love it.
actually made a ton of sales calls. And she's how we originally got into Whole Foods was from my mom.
Of course, that sounds like your mom, and I don't even know her, but from what you are, I'm
You would
like,
love
I
her.
believe it. That's
Yeah.
so
So she's
fun.
still making calls, not all the time, but when
Yeah,
when she gets around to it.
yeah, that's great. So the OG granola, that is crazy. You still haven't changed your recipe since then. So you just moved that into that's nuts.
Yeah, and I
And
mean,
then
I was
when,
I
how
was so
long?
lucky because I hardly ever write down recipes and I happened to write down what I was doing. So subconsciously there must have been something there that like I thought maybe that this was going to be something, but
Super cool.
yeah. And
So
then
then,
we have some new products coming out this
yeah, I
year.
was going to ask what's coming next.
Well, I can't exactly
Of
tell you,
course, of course.
but they're going to be my new favorite products for sure.
Really,
Yeah,
they've got to be dessert, cookies or something.
it's a new category. Um, They're
And
not cookies. They're
they're
not.
not cookies. Okay. And are they shelf stable?
Yes.
Okay. I won't ask any more questions. What categories are you in now? So you're in granola, you have cups of warm oatmeal, right? Like
Yeah,
add
so
water.
we have cups of oatmeal and we have multi-pack. So those were kind of recent. We just launched those towards the end of 2021. So, the 6 sachets in a box.
Yeah.
And we're expanding actually that line that we will be coming out in June. So really expanding
Oh,
our oatmeal line with some great flavors and prebiotics and just like really awesome oatmeal SKUs that I'm super
cool.
excited about. And then we have pancake mix. So kind of what I started with, it's like our pancake 2.0 version. And then we'll have this new category that we'll be launching
So
into.
exciting. So, but the pancake mix is relatively new too. So when you launched, you had some pancake mix. Did it go away and then come back?
It did, yeah. So ultimately, when granola came out and it was, quickly our top seller. And, from a usage occasion, someone's going through bags of granola, as you know, quite quickly,
Yeah.
where a
Yeah.
mix you
You buy
might
multiple at a
use.
time, high return,
Right.
and it's just smarter to focus there.
Exactly. So we really said, all right, let's, put this aside, focus on what's working quickly, and then, came back to it years later.
Awesome. I love it. I can't wait to see when will we know what your new category is? How long do we have
We'll
to
be
wait?
launching in August.
Oh, God, not
Not for a
that far.
while.
I'm going to do my research because I'm going to find out what category resets in August at Whole Foods, and then I'll be able to tell what you're
Exactly. You're gonna be able to figure it
I
out.
will.
We're also gonna have a brand refresh.
Oh, exciting. Do you guys hire an
Yeah,
agency? What'd you do?
we did. We hired an agency, and it's our first, I would say, real refresh. Like, we've done minor tweaks to the
Yeah.
packaging over the last 12 years, but this is the first kind of big
Change.
change. Like, our logo is changing
Oh,
slightly.
easy. Yeah.
And so we'll be showing that in March at Expo West,
Exciting.
which we're so excited about.
Yeah. That is scary, but exciting. I love it. Yeah.
The process was super scary, I
Was it?
think. Just
Yeah.
as, we had said, like, let's open it up that you could go
Oh,
close in and further out. And
yeah.
once we saw the further out, that was the scary part of, like,
Yeah.
I
So
can't do
did you
that.
end up landing on a further out or a closer in
A
change?
closer in. Yeah.
Okay. Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even nervous about it because I just think it's going to look great. And it's still so recognizable
Yeah.
that there won't be confusion.
Yeah. That's like always key. I feel like you get in trouble or you can tell like what brand's really desperate when suddenly their packaging just dramatically changes and you're like, okay, no matter what lipstick you put on that one,
Yeah.
it's not going to be enough to do it. But yeah, that's very cool. Okay, I have one last question for you. This is what I ask. This is what I ask everyone. I always get the most interesting answers. But what is something about you that most people don't know?
Ooh. Um, the first thing that comes to mind, I suppose, is that I'm an introvert.
Really?
So that has definitely been something over the years that has become, I would say, easier. But, like, starting out, that was definitely a challenge in the business for me. Um, and definitely something that's evolved, and I've learned to embrace and know, like, when I need to have my quiet time and when I need to be in a group, and, balancing all those things.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like that's a new thing. Like people weren't recognizing that like 10 years ago, but now that is like something where people are like, hey, it's okay to not want to be surrounded by people 24 hours a day. And that can mean that you just do need, like you recharge alone versus recharging like with people, right? Can't that mean that sometimes? Like, what's your
Totally.
definition of introvert?
Just, like, I think recognizing that, like, I need that I feel recharged more often, like, in it by myself or in smaller groups. So I think about, like, being at Expo, for example, where you're there all day and talking to people, which I'm sure everybody kind of feels this way. But at the end of the day, I always say, I'm like, it is just our team going to dinner. Like, I cannot have some external people that I need to then be on for the rest of
Yeah.
the day, which probably everyone feels that way at Expo. But
Expo is so overwhelming. For those listening that don't know or have never been, Expo West is like the biggest trade show in the food industry, and it draws like what there were like 70,000 people there
yeah,
last expo they had, which was a while ago, but every year it just gets bigger and bigger. And it is, I agree with you. I'm pretty extroverted. Like I could be around people 24 hours a day, every day and be fine. But at expo, I like kind of dread sometimes going to expo. It's just so emotionally exhausting, but yeah, I hear you on that. Well, I love it. Thank you for joining us.
thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so great hearing your story. Let everyone know where they can find you before we let you go.
So you can find us on purelyelizabeth.com, in every retailer, Whole Foods, Kroger, Target, Walmart, and on social, we're purely_Elizabeth.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks so much. And we can't wait to see what you come out with in August.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.